Suspected Namibian drug mule Pauline Mbangula, 30, who is accused of drug trafficking in South Africa, appeared in the Kempton Park Magistrates Court on Wednesday. The state opposed a bail application as her immigration status is also being investigated. According to NCA News, Mbangula, who appeared without legal representation, requested that her photo not be taken for security reasons. Mbangula is facing charges of drug possession and drug trafficking, although South African police say she could face more unspecified charges. The drugs are worth 800,000 Namibian dollars, according to NCA News. Mbangula was arrested at Tambo International Airport in Joburg on Sunday with over 60 pallets of cocaine, which were discovered in her stomach. On Monday, South African police spokesperson Brigadier Athlina Mate told the Namibian a medical examination confirmed that all drugs had been removed from Mbangula's body. The estimated weight is 850 grams, Mate said. According to Mate, Mbangula is the 10th drug mule to be arrested at Tambo International in the past 2 months. Mbangula was traveling from Brazil when she was arrested. She was taken to a local hospital and where an x-ray confirmed the presence of foreign objects in her stomach, Mate said. Political parties told the Namibian this week the country's high employment rate is forcing young people like Mbangula to engage in criminal activities such as drug trafficking. Now, Mbangula had a boyfriend, Nigerian boyfriend, who seems to have convinced her to go to Brazil. Now, we don't know whether before she left, she knew what she was going to do in Brazil, or she went there thinking she's going on a vacation, and she gets there and is like, you're not going anywhere unless you swallow these things. And she was by herself when she arrived at Tambo. The boyfriend has not been arrested. We don't know who tipped off who or what, whether was it a diversion for something else. But I think there are a trail of things. If you're going to be coming from Brazil, from Colombia, and you have a connection to a Nigerian person, at this point, it all equals to drugs. At this point, I mean, there are several red flags here. It's a pity that a young person was convinced, to either be in a relationship with someone who is a drug dealer of some sort, or be convinced to go to Brazil, or be in so much poverty that this became an option for her and she thought she could get away with it, right? Either way, it's a very sad story. And this is the latest update from this story. I'm not sure if there are going to be any other updates in the future, but this is really sad.
Following the latest arrest of a 30-year-old drug mule, which makes it 10 to be arrested at Tambo International Airport in just the past 2 months alone. She was arrested after landing from Sao Paulo on Sunday morning. Now again, earlier this month, another drug mule was nabbed at the same airport, also from a flight from Sao Paulo, and they were expected to catch a connecting flight to Nigeria. And in July, you'd remember, police uncovered an industrial-scale meth lab on a farm in Limpopo, where 4 suspects, including 2 Mexicans, were arrested. But we're asking the question, is this work a signal that things are moving towards the right direction, or is there more that still needs to be done? In studio, we do have with us a strategy and security advisor, MD Mashaile, who is joining us live now. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I'm going to start with, a lot of people, of course, when they start to see these busts happen, whether it's a drug mule here, it's a drug lab there, or whatever kind of bust it comes in whatever form, they say that things are moving, but are they moving towards the right direction?
They are moving in the right direction, Ausbongi. For the fact that in 2 months, you have been able to arrest 10 mules. I would answer that question that you asked by looking at the convictions that follows the arrest. An arrest is a nice signal, But what is more critical is the conviction in a court of law, as well as incarceration to change the behavior of the 30-year-old, and one that came from my home community some 3, 4, 5 years back, who was arrested having had left a two-year-old baby going to Brazil to fetch what they call Brazilian hair, only to find that you are being used as a decoy and you get arrested when you come in from Brazil. In this particular context, this young lady was arrested by the Brazilian authorities.
What are we to make, from the fact that 2 of these 10, from what we know, were coming from a flight from Sao Paulo, connecting obviously one to Nigeria? But what are we to read into that?
There is a report called the Powder Storm, released by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime. And in the Powder Storm, you get told that from the Central Americas through to KZN, the border posts there or the ports there, you find the Mexican dropping 122 tons of cocaine, 100 tons going, part of it going to Australia, the other part of the 100 tons going to East Africa, 22 tons, Ausbongi, being consumed by South Africans. I can tell you based on that report, it's a 2022 report released in 2023, 350,000 people in our country by then were consuming cocaine on a daily basis, not monthly. Now, this tells you Central America is a problem for the drug networks and for the transnational organized crime. Hence, you saw those 2 Mexicans. I want to assume, having done research and not having put my finger on the right pulse, that those 2 Mexicans were chemists, they were chemical engineers who were the masterminds in terms of mixing the chemicals to produce the drugs in that area in Limpopo where they were arrested. Why would they be here if they were not chemists and experts?
Sure. And what does it mean then if they are to move in this direction as well, where it's now through the ports and all of that? Are we as South Africa focusing even on all fronts to ensure that this is shut down? Or is, what we're seeing at the airports and what we saw in Groblersdal enough, or even, to even get us to people that we call the kingpins?
It means we are doing what we are expected to do by the ordinary you and I, the ordinary Gogo, where you and I come from. The minute and the moment we deal with clean our own operatives at border posts, at ports, those who are responsible for stealing. In 2016, if you remember, I think 8 of them were arrested for stealing drugs in the containment area. Those individuals being police members, and some of them having been caught from KZN using marked vehicles, arrested on their way with drugs to Gauteng. So these arrests and the gusto with which arrests are being made suggest that South African policing service and law enforcement agencies in the country and cooperating with their international counterparts are on the right path. In fact, Ausbongi, we have been excellent when it comes to policing our ports. It's only a few individuals who are elements subject to being the pushers of corruption by allowing those individuals to contaminate them and pay them so that they let these contrabands into our country and destroy our young boys and girls.
I was going to go there because it's one thing to even, look at policing and all of that, but what we are seeing in the townships is heartbreaking. You see a number of young people who are hooked on drugs. And what does it tell us then if, yes, people are getting arrested, but the substance is still not off our streets?
The substance is not off the streets. You go into many communities, a community where I was born and bred, you go to El Dorado Park, you go to the Western Cape, you realize that we need to have better intelligence organization, a better intelligence infrastructure, whether it has to involve ordinary people on the ground in terms of gathering information and sharing that information with trust worthy law enforcement officers. I have asked a number of people, why have you not shared this information with law enforcement agencies? And I've been told in my face, when we tell them that ND is selling XYZ, tomorrow ND knows that a particular person A, B, or C has ratted him out. So we would rather close our eyes and allow that kid to be destroyed as long as it's not my kid. Even in the instance where that kid is a daughter or a son to my former friend or a friend who passed on, you find it so difficult to can get information on where these people get these drugs from and what are the people in the immediate vicinity saying with regards to collecting information. Now, this speaks very ill of our law enforcement agencies. Let me qualify this statement. It's not all police officers. It's a small number that are being paid the 50 rands, the 100 rands to ensure that they allow this evil business to go on and on and on.
As a final question, briefly then, let's look at the sea. How are things looking there when it comes to the transportation? Because as much as we're looking at airports, we're looking at, some labs, but what's happening there as well, if anything?
The Mexicans were dropping off their contrabands, their illicit substance.
Is it only at the ports?
No, in the ocean. And that stuff would drift towards our international space, at our ports. They were doing it strategical, operating in international waters where our police couldn't do anything. But with the cooperation of law enforcement agencies, you and I have seen police from all over the world, the Navy, the Marine, the Coast Guard, working hand in glove to ensure that they arrest those who even manufacture speedboats for the distribution of the substance. Even Ausbongi, even go to an extent of buying submarines to ensure that this evil business goes on.
Sure. And one wonders, what does it mean then for the kingpins? When we are finding ourselves in this position?
We have a responsibility, amongst others, to pop up law enforcement agencies to ensure that those who are arrested are provided with tea and cake so that they can identify who the kingpin is. Remember, Usbongi, the runners, you can arrest the runners. They will be replaced. A runner is a person with a PIN code or a personal number. When you get arrested, they go out there and they recruit, and the runnership profile continues. The runnership profile of 18 to 35-year-olds who want to look flashy, who wants to have that big watch, who wants to have that 4x4. I'm not going to mention anything. So the runnership profile and greed, amongst other things, and competition amongst young people leads us to a situation where we have some serious challenges in terms of cutting the spine of the transnational organized crime, removing the runnership.
Sure. Certainly, we've just, not only begun to scratch the surface of this conversation, but thank you so much for coming through. And really, this is, one of those worrying developing stories as we continue then to see the arrest of some of the drug mules. But what does it mean for those who are behind some of these wide networks? And what will it take to even bring some of these networks down? Certainly conversations worth having. Again, that's strategy and security advisor. And